Persona 5 has received a lot of love and affection from its developer Atlus. It has gotten not only one but two spin-offs in the form of Persona 5 Strikers, and now of course Persona 5 Tactica. The critically acclaimed JRPG certainly deserves that love, as despite some questionable elements, it is a triumph. Unfortunately, while Strikers proved to be a natural extension of the formula, Tactica feels like an afterthought. While it isn't awful by any means, it proves that perhaps there truly can be too much of a good thing. Persona 5 Tactica starts players off a year after the events of the original game, with Joker and the gang hanging out in Café LeBlanc. Of course, it doesn't take long until they're swept away into a magical kingdom ruled over by a tyrannical queen desperate to get married. No time is wasted getting straight into the extraordinarily weird, yet perfectly suitable for Persona, narrative. Fortunately, even if you haven't played the original game or any others in the series, you'll still be able to appreciate Tactica's roughly 18 to 20 hour long story. That's because for the most part the characters and references from the previous game are largely inconsequential, acting more as background to an altogether new narrative that ditches the rules established in the previous games and focuses on two new characters. All the narrative development is given to these two characters, Irina and Shiro, and it's through their connection to the metaverse that you'll experience much of the story. Fortunately, Irina and Shiro succeed in carrying the narrative for the most part. The development of their relationship and interpersonal issues is consistently engaging, never going as far as the original game's more complex story beats, but nevertheless proving to be intriguing. Unfortunately, the narrative is paced incredibly poorly. You'll go through each of the game's kingdoms with the same objective, defeat the tyrant. Rarely does the story go beyond that, save to expand more on the dual protagonists. You'll also experience the majority of it through barely animated visual novel-esque dialogue exchanges, which are only interrupted to give you more of the same bland tactical gameplay you've done a million times. Speaking of gameplay, Persona 5 Tactica is a turn-based tactics game. You'll control three characters and navigate them across maps filled with enemies. There's cover that will shield you from most damage, but if either you or your enemy are caught out of cover in a hit, you'll be downed. This in turn gives the attacker another go, allowing them to move further and attack again. This can even be stacked, essentially allowing you to take out almost an entire battlefield in one go, if you're smart enough. It's a fun twist and one that elevates mostly familiar turn-based combat. Outside of this mechanic, Tactica has a fair amount of depth. Unfortunately, it doesn't really give you a lot of meaningful opportunities to implement that depth. Missions tend to feature the same objectives, kill every enemy or reach a certain point, with arena layouts almost always looking and functioning the same. It does occasionally get creative, especially in later kingdoms, but it takes far too long to get there and you'll very quickly get bored. Switching between dialogue segments and then the same tactic gameplay with nothing to break it up in between gets exhausting, making a relatively short game feel extraordinarily long at times. While the gameplay in Tactica is actually quite impressive, it's squandered due to poor pacing and repetition. Persona 5 Tactica is not a bad game, however it's not a particularly impressive one either. Its story is multi-layered but pushes aside the very foundations it's built upon in favour of two mostly interesting characters. Its gameplay has depth but is painfully repetitive, only introducing interesting mechanics after about 10 hours or so. Its visuals feel distinct but also rather repetitive, with battlefields feeling copied and pasted across the game's 60 plus missions. If you're a fan of the Persona 5 games, then I'd recommend picking this up. However, if you don't already have an affinity with the game, then I would encourage you to wait for a sale. The game creator is giving Persona 5 Tactica a 6 out of 10. Make sure to like and subscribe for more reviews just like this one.